शैलेश, आपका जो प्रश्न था चीन की केंद्रता का शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था के संदर्भ में, देखिए, मैं आपसे इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा कि जो भारत का परिप्रेक्ष्य है वो ये है कि शंघाई कोऑपरेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक रीजनल संस्था है जिसमें भारत एक सदस्य है और जिसमें मुख्य केंद्रता का एक परिप्रेक्ष्य जो है, एक पिलर जो है, वो सेंट्रल एशियन देशों की सेंट्रिसिटी है। आपकी जो टिप्पणी थी आपके प्रश्न से जुड़ी हुई कि एक देश ने ये किया, एक देश ने वो किया, मैं आपसे इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा कि जो भारत के हित हैं शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था को लेके, शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था से जुड़े हुए भारत के जो क्षेत्रीय हित हैं, जो उन सदस्य देशों के साथ सहयोग है, उन सदस्य देशों के भीतर जो सेंट्रल एशिया के 5 देश हैं उनके साथ सहयोग है, चाहे वो सहयोग आर्थिक हो, चाहे वो सुरक्षा के क्षेत्र में हो, चाहे वो सहयोग या परिप्रेक्ष्यों का आदान प्रदान क्षेत्रीय तथा अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्थिति के बारे में वार्ता को लेके हो। हमारा मानना है कि इसमें किसी एक देश की केंद्रता नहीं अपितु क्षेत्रीय केंद्रता है। तो बाकी हर देश सेंट्रल एशियन कंट्रीज़ के साथ सहयोग का अपना एक परिप्रेक्ष्य रखता है। भारत का जो परिप्रेक्ष्य सेंट्रल एशियन देशों के साथ है वो स्वयं में अपने आप में पूर्ण है और संपूर्ण है और हम उसको किसी तृतीय क्षेत्र से बाहर देश के परिप्रेक्ष्य जो है उसका आंकलन नहीं करते हैं।
Very good morning to all of you. Thank you for turning out in large numbers for this very special media briefing that we have for Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to Samarkand for the SCO Summit. We have the privilege of having with us Foreign Secretary Sir, Shri Vinay Quatra, to give us a curtain raiser perspective of, if you could not block the media line. And also with us, Shri Adar Swaika, Joint Secretary looking after Eurasia Division. So without further time. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Arindam. Joint Secretary Eurasia, Adarsh, Arindam, friends from the media, a very good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for coming here this morning for this special briefing on Prime Minister's upcoming visit to participate in the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization starting tomorrow. Just wanted to highlight a few elements relating to that visit, and opening remarks are by way of that. At the invitation of the President of Uzbekistan, Mr. Shaukat Mirzayev, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will be leaving later this evening for a 24-hour visit to Samarkand, Uzbekistan, to participate in the 22nd meeting of the Council of Heads of State of the SCO. As you all know, Uzbekistan is the current chair of the organization. You are also aware that SCO is a regional multilateral organization that has 8 member states, namely India, China, Russia, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and the host of the SCO chair this time, Uzbekistan. SCO was set up in June 2001, and in the Council of the SCO Heads of State is the highest decision-making body of the organization and meets for an annual summit that is hosted by a member state of the SCO. Prime Minister Modi has been leading the Indian delegation to the SCO summit every year since we became its full member in 2017. During the last 2 summits in 2020 and 21, Prime Minister participated in a virtual format. So, in Samarkand, we expect full physical format participation by all the leaders. Since joining SCO as a full member, India has been making positive contributions to the SCO processes, deliberations, and its outcomes. After the Council of Heads of State, the Council of Heads of Government is the second most important mechanism of the SCO, which deals principally with trade, economy, and cultural agenda of the organization. India chaired this mechanism during 2020, with the then Vice President Shri Venkaiah Naidu presiding over our summit meeting in November 2020 in virtual format. During our chairmanship at that time, a number of initiatives were taken, including holding an exhibition of shared Buddhist heritage in SCO member states in virtual format by the National Museum, translation of 10 books of regional Indian literature into the official languages of the SCO, that's the Russian and the Chinese, and hosting the first SCO Startup Forum, the first SCO MSME Forum, and the first SCO Young Scientist Conclave in virtual format. The regional anti-terrorist structure, the RATS of SCO, is another important mechanism of the organization. India assumed the chairship of the Executive Council of RATS in October last year for a year, and has been focusing on promoting practical cooperation in combating the problem of terrorism in our region. Moving on to the Samarkand Summit, Prime Minister will arrive in Samarkand, as I said earlier, later this evening. He will attend the summit tomorrow morning. The summit usually has two sessions. One, a restricted session, which is meant only for the SCO member states, and then an extended session that will likely include participation by observers and also the special invitees of the chair country, that is Uzbekistan, as also some of the regional organizations which participate in the SCO summit. The heads of the two permanent bodies of the SCO, the Secretary General of the SCO Secretariat and Director of SCO RATS, will also be present in both sessions. We expect that the discussions during the summit would cover topical, regional and international issues, reform and expansion of SCO, the security situation in the region, our cooperation perspective in the region, including strengthening connectivity, as well as boosting trade and tourism in the region. Samarkand Declaration and numerous other documents are expected to be finalized during the summit. They are currently under consideration of the SCO member countries. Apart from the summit activities, Prime Minister will hold bilateral meetings with the President of Uzbekistan and some other leaders on the sidelines of the summit. PM's participation in this summit is a reflection of the importance that India attaches to the SCO and its goals. This is also tied to our approach and engagement with the region as a whole. As you're well aware, India hosted the first India Central Asia Summit earlier this year, preceded by a foreign minister level meeting. We remain focused on strengthening our linkages with Central Asia and the extended neighborhood, and this visit will take that vision and that perspective forward. I thanks very much, and if there are questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Thank you very much, sir. Before we move on to the question, hold on, I'm sure there's interest. Please introduce yourself and the organization and limit your questions, please. We have a little tight time constraints. Trying to start at the first row always. Sorry.
This is Shailesh from the New Indian Express. Who are the other countries with whom PM Modi will have bilaterals, and are there chances of his having any kind of a conversation with Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Who are the people with the exact same question on bilaterals on this? Please raise your hand right now so I don't repeat. Okay, hold on. Yes, on this issue.
Sir, Shruti Ranjan from the Bloomberg, sir. On the bilaterals, will the Foreign Secretary give us a clarification? Is there a possibility of the Prime Minister meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping Is it under discussion?
On the bilaterals, let's go through this bilateral.
And also anything on the bilateral with President Putin, sir?
Both then. Yes, please.
सर मैं कविता हूँ हरिभूमि से। सर जो बायलैटरल मीटिंग्स हैं चाइनीज़ प्रेसिडेंट के साथ बायलैटरल मीटिंग होनी है और पाकिस्तान और चीन की तरफ से क्या विदेश मंत्रालय को कोई इसके बारे में आपके पास कोई कम्युनिकेशन आया है बायलैटरल मीटिंग को लेकर के प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी के साथ?
Somebody else behind you? Okay.
Manish Kumar from Financial Express. Sir, we understand SCO is largely bereft of the bilateral talks. How do we merge the bilateral?
Could you repeat your question?
In SCO, we do not basically emphasize on the bilateral issues.
Okay.
Right? But still, we see a lot of bilateral talks underway. So, how do we merge and sort of decide or kind of reach towards such a conclusion, which is away from the SCO charter?
Okay.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sean Lee with the Wall Street Journal. My question is on Russian oil.
Can you just come back to this after the bilateral? There's a whole set of people on bilateral. I'll come back to you. I'm sure there are other questions. Yeah, please.
फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी मैं मनीष झा हूँ TV9 भारतवर्ष से। ऐसा लगता है कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर और चाइनीज़ प्रेसिडेंट के बीच कोई बायलैटरल नहीं होगी, और अगर ऐसा होता है तो क्या हम कह सकते हैं कि जैसे पाकिस्तान को लेकर हमने एक मैसेज दिया है कि टॉक्स एंड टेरर कैन नॉट गो टुगेदर, उसी तरह से चीन को लेकर भी अब है कि जब तक स्टेटस को बहाल नहीं होगा तब तक शी जिनपिंग के साथ मीटिंग नहीं होगी?
आप और बाकी लोगों में बड़ी मतभेद है, जो डिफरेंस या there is okay, one second, I'll come back to you. I'll come back. Yes, on the same topic, bilaterals.
आप पहले प्रश्नों की सहमति बना लीजिए, उसके बाद हम उत्तर की सहमति
नहीं मिल रहे हैं, आप मिल रहे हैं, प्लीज योर टर्न।
कादम्बिनी शर्मा फ्रॉम NDTV इंडिया। अगर ईरान के साथ बायलैटरल होता है तो क्या फोकस तेल पर रहेगा?
On the details of bilateral, come to it. I think somebody else had a hand. Yes. धीरे, आपको माइक्रोफोन नहीं चल रहा है, धीरे।
सर मैं मनीष हूँ जी न्यूज़ से। मेरा सवाल है कि SCO लीडर्स बोट राइडिंग भी कर रहे हैं, क्या प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी भी बोट राइडिंग का उनका कोई उसमें कार्यक्रम में शामिल है?
बोट राइडिंग
हो रही है।
Okay, I will hand over this. On that note, I'll hand over to you.
Let me ride the boat. This entire rubric of questions relating to Prime Minister's bilateral engagements on the sidelines of the SCO, तथा जो स्पेसिफिक जो आप लोगों के प्रश्न हैं, किस नेता के साथ द्विपक्षीय वार्ता होगी अथवा नहीं होगी. See, all I will say is, which I have mentioned in my opening remarks also, is that besides his bilateral with the host country, chair of the SCO Summit, Uzbekistan's Prime Minister will have other bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the summit, and we would keep you apprised as along the way when the Prime Minister's schedule of these bilateral meetings unfolds as we go along. At this stage, that is all I can share with you. मैं किसी भी चीज़ पे अपना इंटरप्रिटेशन आपके प्रश्न द्वारा जो अंकित है वो नहीं कहना चाहूँगा इस समय. But there was this one question with regard to, well, boat is a different thing. I think Manish from the Financial Express asked about the question relating to how do we balance bilateral conversations with the SCO agenda. I think, Manish, you are absolutely right that SCO essentially focuses on topics of interest that are topical to the region and doesn't go into the details of bilateral issues between the two countries. And traditionally, if you look at the SCO's agenda, and also, of course, from the time that India has been its full member, we have also seen that its focus remains on discussing developments which are taking place in our region and the world. It also focuses on mitigating the common challenges that face the region, in this particular case, countering terrorism. It also discusses how trade and economic cooperation can be strengthened in the region. Those are the elements which stay focused on in discussions during the SCO summit. But I don't see there is any conflict between that and the leaders' discussions, bilateral discussions between the leaders that take place on the sidelines of the SCO summit. So I think the two are different buckets, and they both stand on their own in that sense. Well, I really don't have an answer on the boat ride. I think it's a Prime Minister's schedule in Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit this time is he's there for a very brief period. Essentially, he reaches there later tonight, attends the restricted and the extended session tomorrow, and the couple of other engagements which are relating to SCO summit tomorrow. Does a set of bilateral meetings, which, as I said, we'll keep you apprised of as they unfold, and then returns later tonight, scheduled to return tomorrow night, sorry. If there is a boat ride in this...
The context... the context of the question was the leaders who've reached already.
Yeah.
There was an event where they were taken for a boat ride. Yeah. I don't think Prime Minister will.
No, Prime Minister will attend his programs relating to the summit after he reaches there and for the time that he's there. Yeah, thank you.
I had interrupted you, so for honor. Yeah,
speak.
My question is just about Russian oil. Is Russian offering deeper discounts on its oil as an inducement for India to not join the G7 price cap proposal? And if so, how steep are the discounts?
You have to bring it to some with this. This is a special briefing on the SCO, so I would not like to have Foreign Secretary also.
Okay.
Is there a SCO link to it?
Out there. And also, just I'm sorry to just follow up. The Russian side has confirmed that there will be a bilateral meeting between Putin and Prime Minister Modi, so I just wanted to follow up.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, please.
सर, मेरा नाम शैलेश कुमार है और मैं नेशनल डिफेंस से हूँ। मैं आपसे जानना चाहता हूँ कि क्या SCO बाय एंड लार्ज चाइना सेंट्रिक हो गया है, भारत को इससे क्या फ़ायदा हुआ है, खास करके जितने भी मेंबर स्टेट्स हैं वो सब जिनजियांग से लगे हुए हैं उनके बॉर्डर्स, और एक तरह से चीन जब से संघाई 5 और उसके बाद SCO आया तब से जिनजियांग को उन्होंने पूरी तरह से सेटल कर लिया, चाहे टेररिज्म हो, चाहे और भी समस्याएं हो, डेमोग्राफी चेंज जो कि 50% लगभग चेंज हो गई है, इंटरनलाइजेशन ऑफ उइगर्स मुस्लिम्स, वो सब कर लिया, लेकिन चीन ओवरलुक करता रहा है हमारे कंसर्न्स को, चाहे वो PRI एक्सटेंड कर रहा हो सब जगह, पर वो CPEC हमारी सोवरेनिटी को चैलेंज कर रहे हैं। अभी हमारे बॉर्डर डिस्प्यूट है,
छोटा रखें क्वेश्चन।
क्या चीन जो है हमारे इंटरेस्ट को ओवरलुक कर रहा है और अपने इंटरेस्ट को प्रमोट कर रहा है?
Thank you. Question right to the back. I'll come back. One by one. Yeah, Pranay, go ahead.
सर, प्रणय उपाध्याय ABP न्यूज़ से। सर, मेरी दो छोटी जिज्ञासा हैं। प्रधानमंत्री जी जा रहे हैं समरकंद में, तो वहाँ कई SCO देशों का ये प्रस्ताव है कि डोमेस्टिक ट्रेड के लिए जो या रीजनल ट्रेड या बायलैटरल ट्रेड के लिए करेंसी जो लोकल करेंसीज हैं उनका इस्तेमाल किया जाए। भारत का उस पर क्या नज़रिया है? दूसरी बात, एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी को लेकर कितना महत्वपूर्ण होगा प्रधानमंत्री का बायलैटरल एंगेजमेंट और जो SCO एंगेजमेंट है, क्या कुछ होने वाला है उसमें?
नेक्स्ट टू यू
Sir, times now. You spoke about rats and how important it is and how effective it is. Now, keeping in mind the fact that one of the members of the SCO is a country we have constantly spoken about, and perhaps rightly too, about cross-border terrorism, how can rats evolve if one of the 8 members is so involved in cross-border terrorism?
There, please. I'll come back to you guys. No, inko. You had a question? No, sorry. I thought I saw your hand. Okay, go ahead then. Reza, go ahead.
Foreign Secretary, Reza from Hindustan Times. Similar question to the last question. We've heard about RATS always as a forum for practical counter-terror cooperation. But how do we do this when Pakistan actively harbors anti-India terror groups and China is blocking efforts to list those terrorists?
Okay, somebody had a hand here. Okay, please, both of you. Yeah, then we'll close with that.
Foreign Secretary, Shashank Mattu with the Mint. So you talked about trade and connectivity, but China, for example, has north of $40 billion of trade with the 5 Central Asian countries. We have somewhere around $2 billion. They're also partly funding a very expansive rail network connectivity project in Central Asia. Your sense of what the economic strategy is for India with Central Asia going forward?
So maybe we'll take this round and take another last round. I'll come back to the remaining.
Yeah, sure. Trying to catch the district. Ms. Lee, on your question relating to the Russian oil and the price cap coalition, India is not a member of the G7. Just for record purposes, to be clear on that. Deeper discounts, market pricing. Look, we have said this several times at other platforms also, that when the Indian entities go out and try to respond to India's needs of the energy security and procure oil, they essentially procure it from the market. These are not government-to-government purchases that we do. On the price cap coalition, well, what form it takes, what shape it evolves into, is something I think which the people, the countries that have floated that idea, perhaps can better answer to that. With regard to Prime Minister's bilateral meetings in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I'll only repeat what I have said earlier. We have seen reports that you're referring to. I can confirm to you that as the schedule unfolds of the bilateral meetings, we will keep you fully apprised of them as we go along. शैलेश, आपका जो प्रश्न था चीन की केंद्रता का शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था के संदर्भ में, देखिए, मैं आपसे इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा कि जो भारत का परिप्रेक्ष्य है वो ये है कि शंघाई कोऑपरेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एक रीजनल संस्था है जिसमें भारत एक सदस्य है और जिसमें मुख्य केंद्रता का एक परिप्रेक्ष्य जो है, एक पिलर जो है, वो सेंट्रल एशियन देशों की सेंट्रिसिटी है। आपकी जो टिप्पणी थी आपके प्रश्न से जुड़ी हुई कि एक देश ने ये किया, एक देश ने वो किया, मैं आपसे इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा कि जो भारत के हित हैं शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था को लेके, शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था से जुड़े हुए भारत के जो क्षेत्रीय हित हैं, जो उन सदस्य देशों के साथ सहयोग है, उन सदस्य देशों के भीतर जो सेंट्रल एशिया के 5 देश हैं उनके साथ सहयोग है, चाहे वो सहयोग आर्थिक हो, चाहे वो सुरक्षा के क्षेत्र में हो, चाहे वो सहयोग या परिप्रेक्ष्यों का आदान प्रदान क्षेत्रीय तथा अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्थिति के बारे में वार्ता को लेके हो। हमारा मानना है कि इसमें किसी एक देश की केंद्रता नहीं अपितु क्षेत्रीय केंद्रता है। तो बाकी हर देश सेंट्रल एशियन कंट्रीज़ के साथ सहयोग का अपना एक परिप्रेक्ष्य रखता है। भारत का जो परिप्रेक्ष्य सेंट्रल एशियन देशों के साथ है वो स्वयं में अपने आप में पूर्ण है और संपूर्ण है और हम उसको किसी तृतीय क्षेत्र से बाहर देश के परिप्रेक्ष्य जो है उसका आंकलन नहीं करते हैं। प्रणय, आपके जो 2 जिज्ञासाएं थी, एक करेंसी स्वैप को लेके और एक एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी को लेके, जैसे कि मैंने अपने ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स में भी कहा कि जो शंघाई कोऑपरेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की समिट में जो भी डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं, जो भी उनका जो भी आउटकम होगा वो अभी अंडर कंसिडरेशन है। उसके बारे में जब तक चीज़ें पूरी रूप से स्पष्ट नहीं हो जाती कहना मुश्किल है। मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि जब हम आर्थिक सहयोग की बात शंघाई कोऑपरेशन संस्था के संदर्भ में करते हैं तो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी जैसे प्रश्न और बाकी प्रश्न जैसे आपने जो उठाए वो सब वार्ता का भाग होते हैं, मगर वो आउटकम का क्या परिप्रेक्ष्य रहता है वो जो है समिट समझ ख़त्म होने के बाद ही स्पष्ट रूप से कहा जा सकता है. On the two linked questions on terrorism, I think one from Times Now and other from Raza from Hindustan Times. I think there are multiple ways to look at the how different countries assess and look at the challenge of terrorism in the region. You mentioned about Pakistan and it's linked with the challenge of terrorism in the region. I can tell you that if you look at the history of discussions on countering terrorism within the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, you will find that both the substance of the discussion and the various structures of the SCO, their handling of this issue has evolved over a period of years, and now irrespective of what a particular country does on this problem of terrorism, there is a deeply held, I would say, understanding and a deep appreciation within the SCO countries of what the nature of this terrorism is, where this problem comes from, and most importantly, the need for the SCO countries on their own, as also for the SCO structures, including in particular RADs, to come together and form ways, which I mentioned in my opening remarks, form ways for practical cooperation. And this is something which we have been focusing very strongly on ever since we took the chairship of the Executive Council of RADS in October last year. I'm sure you would have followed that the SCO RADS structure has also decided to work towards creating a unified register of terrorist and extremist organizations whose activities are prohibited on the territories of the SCO member countries within SCO RADS. There is the question of databases which this particular problem involves, and RADS as a body is definitely working to develop a sharper focus on this issue. There was this last question on the economic engagement, etc. I have mentioned this earlier also, and if you look at the deliberations of India Central Asia Summit earlier this year, you will find far greater details there. But there are multiple elements to India Central Asia trade and economic cooperation. And we look at it from the perspective of the value proposition that India's trade and economic cooperation brings when it partners with Central Asian countries. And these value propositions stand basically based on our complementarities and our engagement with Central Asia, and which I mentioned. One, focus on trade and connectivity, and this is something which has again grown over the period of years quite considerably. There is, of course, the international North-South transport corridor, which links an element of Central Asia. There is this larger emphasis on connectivity with Central Asia through multiple laterals, which connects India with the Central Asian countries. There is focus on business-to-business cooperation, commercial cooperation, essentially through the Business Council segment of which again is a derivative of the India Central Asian Summit outcomes. There is specific focus on products and services that we think are complementary in terms of India's engagement, business engagement with Central Asia. These include particularly pharma products, agricultural commodities. Oil and gas is an obvious element, imports of minerals, and also the entire element of IT-related services, and also a new element of cooperation in the field of startup and innovation, wherein India would be chairing the special working group, which means a permanent chair essentially of the startup and the innovation working group. So these are these are crucial elements, and we continue to build on them. We are seeing good progress, good growth in some of these areas, but we are very clear in our mind to build them. Build our partnership with Central Asian countries, with each of them individually and with all of them collectively, as also with other countries in our extended neighborhood, based on our strength and based on the value proposition that we bring and the other set of countries bring in to the relationship, and move forward on them. Thank you.
Thanks. We're running a little tight on time, so you please. We'll just take a couple of questions. Yeah,
Sir, Manas Pratim Bhuyan from PTI Press Trust of India. Sir, you mentioned about India's expectations on discussions on various key regional issues at the SCO Summit. And it is actually increasingly clear that China's aggressive behavior and increasing assertiveness, it's an issue for the region, not only for India. Many countries have actually faced these kind of challenges.
Keep it tight.
So, are you expecting any discussion on China's growing assertive in the region, which is creating problem for many other countries? Will India actually raise the issue? Thank you.
I think let me close that here right first. I think I'll not comment on your comment, but to your question, what I would say is that I mentioned already in my opening remarks and repeated it also, that the agenda of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization includes discussion on developments in the region, which is the entire body of the membership of the SCO and the areas connected with it, the countries connected with it. And in that, India will put forward its perspective on how we look at the region, how we look at those developments, how we assess them. I think every country would do that. Thank you.
And the last couple of questions. You have some more? Sorry, I'm really out of time.
So, Sridhar from the Asian Age, you mentioned that the bilaterals are still being firmed up, but I wanted to specifically ask, have we received any feelers from China for a bilateral meeting? And a quick add-on, if I may, the SCO, what Shailesh also referred to, the SCO is now increasingly being viewed as an organization committed to a Russia and China-led worldview, which is sort of anti-Western in terms of some of the statements in the language used in the joint statements. Would you agree that India is sort of slowly being the odd man out in this?
So I think what your second part of the question, I have already answered on that, and I think you need to assess the contribution that each member makes to the organization, and I'm using the word contribution very consciously. You have to look at that part of a member country's engagement with a regional organization from the perspective of what is the value proposition that that particular member brings. And I've already highlighted to you the elements of what India brings to the table. I think the membership, the entire membership of the SCO, 1, 2, the countries which might attend as observers or the countries that might get invited, 3, the Central Asian countries in particular have a very clear and a deep appreciation of what India brings in terms of its strengths, in terms of its values, in terms of its political and economic advantages, that is hugely contributory to the growth of SCO, its agenda, and of course its productive outcomes that it comes up with. So I think on that there is absolutely no doubt, and there is, as I said, a wide and a deep appreciation of that role and the contribution that India has been making to the SCO from the time that it became its full member in 2017, but also even before that. Bilaterals being firmed up. I didn't say that. That's your words. I said, we will keep you apprised as the schedule of bilateral meetings or Prime Minister summit meetings, sideline meetings on the SCO unfolds. That's what I said.
Thank you. I think we'll have to close there. Any particular thing you had a query?
मैं अमित हूँ टाइम्स ऑफ भारत से। एक सवाल है जिससे एससीओ में टेररिज्म को भी लेकर चर्चा होगी, लेकिन जैसे कि पाकिस्तान लगातार मसूद अजहर को लेकर झूठ बोल रहा है, अफगानिस्तान कह रहा है कि अजहर मसूद पाकिस्तान में है, तो ऐसे में एससीओ में कितनी गंभीरता से इस बात को चर्चा होगी और इसको लेकर अजहर मसूद को लेकर आपका क्या स्टैंड है?
अच्छा सर, let me just take the last one. Yeah. Tell me.
So I'm Shailesh, someone from Samarkand TV. I have a very small question. Connectivity has been one of the major problems for India in connecting with Central Asian countries, and India is the only country which is not directly connected to the Central Asian countries. So in this during this summit or even before that, how have been you talking to the SCO members for giving access to India through Pakistan? Because of this we are not getting TAPI and many other benefits that we can get from India Central Asia visa.
Thank you.
It's really a small question.
You had a question? No, that's it. No, nothing further.
This is Sachin from the Times of India. Since we're talking about a possible bilateral with the Chinese president, just wanted to ask you about the significance of the latest round of disengagement which has been effected.
How is that related to the summit? I will not know that. Sorry, apologies.
The president is meeting the Prime Minister.
He is approaching it from another angle.
This is related to the visit. If you can relate it to the visit,
So I just wanted to ask you, what is the significance of that in the context of the overall relationship?
That's not good.
If you could answer that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I think on the recent round of disengagement at a particular point, my foreign minister, external affairs minister, has already commented yesterday on it, so I would not like to say anything more than that. As I said, I'll again repeat what I've said multiple times in this morning's briefing, that we will keep you apprised as the schedule of Prime Minister's bilateral meetings unfolds. Let me, I think, stop there on that one. I think, Akhilesh, your question, with regard to connectivity, how we would try to forge it, how we have been trying to, I would say, overcome the barriers of geography in forging this connectivity. At the risk of quoting again what my EM said at one of his speeches, connectivity for us is whatever connects us is connectivity. We don't look at connectivity purely from the narrow confines of infrastructure connectivity. I think you are referring to. You are referring to that. If you look at connectivity between the societies of Central Asia and India, I don't know if you have had the chance of visiting any of the Central Asian countries. If you visit and you see, you will realize that there is a deeply held bond of cultural connectivity between India and the demographics, population in the countries of Central Asia.
The question is related to land route.
Sorry, I think that.
As I said, land route will take shape along the lines that Central Asian countries and India decide to proceed with regard to establishing connectivity, whether it's a transport connectivity, whether it's a corridor connectivity, whether it's a product-specific connectivity, some of which you referred to, and all the elements that are associated with it.
On the terrorism, I think you already answered. Those that you already answered, so I think terrorism. I think you already answered on terrorism. I don't think this is specific to that.
देखिए, आतंकवाद के प्रश्न पे जो आपका प्रश्न था, मैं बार-बार प्रश्न पूछने से उत्तर तो अलग नहीं आएगा. ये तो विधान है इसी प्रकार का. तो आई थिंक आतंकवाद के प्रश्न पे जो हमारा संज्ञान है, जो हमारा परिप्रेक्ष्य है, वो मैं पहले ही कह चुका हूँ.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you also to Adarsh for being here.